of you healthy and coping with the new reality we find ourselves in as a community. This is obviously a unique and new experience for our board meetings, and our board is committed to governing the school district through whatever challenges we face. We do have a quorum, so I will call this meeting to order. Tonight is Monday, March 23rd, and I want to note that being done virtually, all votes will be done via roll call. Our agenda will follow a different order tonight. For those of you watching from home, I thought it might be helpful to let you know who is actually present for this meeting. We have all 7 board members present. We also have Superintendent Schultz, Business Director John Tope, Legal Counsel Trevor Helmers, and Administrative Assistant Sarah Shandel, Director of Media and Technology Steve Butner, and we have Zach Horn. Superintendent Schultz, would you like to review our agenda for the night?
Thank you, Erica. So tonight we will have approved the minutes. We will have some action around operation of the school board during a pandemic, proposing a new policy 218, and then suspending sections of policy 206, and then also considering the delegation of board clerk duties. Consent agenda, and then action tonight. We have 4 items: budget alignment plan, and then we have some construction agenda items with Valley View school renovation, Southview roof bid, and purchase of buses. And then the information to provide the community around enrollment, expenditures report, policy 104 appendices, and the changes that went through that, and then some staff recognition. And then we protocols for virtual board meetings that was sent to the board right before the meeting. So with that.
Great, John, thank you. I have one change I would like to propose to the agenda tonight. I would like to remove policy 520 on student surveys and send it back to the policy committee. Can I please get a motion to amend the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second from somebody?
Second.
Okay, we will now vote by roll call to amend the agenda to remove policy 520 from the agenda.
Allenberg?
Aye.
Fox?
Aye.
Green?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Michelson?
Aye.
Shaw?
Aye.
Wallenfriedman?
Aye.
Thank you. The meeting has been amended.
Erica, could I ask for an amendment to move to the policy 104 appendices be taken off of information and put back to committee?
Okay, we have a motion to move the appendices for policy 104 and put it back to committee. Do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, we'll vote by roll call to move the appendices for 104 and move that back to the policy committee.
Can I ask why this request is made? I mean, it can go to policy regardless. It's an information item.
Right. Well, it's under information, and this is an unusual meeting, and I understand that I don't want to be putting more on the board right now, but my concerns about removing a complaint procedure, I just would like to ask some questions about what the district is currently, why this is being taken out of policy, and what what the process will be for people if they do have a complaint. What is going to be the new procedure, or maybe we don't need a new procedure, but I would just like to have time for the board and the community to hear what the thinking was so that it just wasn't put on as information in a meeting like this.
Are we able to answer questions during the information section? I don't, because it's on information, I assume that we can answer some questions about your.
Yeah, I'd have to ask, Owen, do you recall? I guess maybe we could talk about that during information. I think
Yeah, I have all the answers to the questions. I assume we can talk about that in the portion of the agenda where it's actually listed right now.
Yes.
But we still have a motion on the table to remove this from the agenda that we need to vote on to put it back in policy committee. So Sarah, could you please do a roll call vote about removing the, I guess, removing this from the
Sure.
agenda?
Sure. Allenberg,
No.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
No.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
No.
Wallen Friedman,
No.
So the motion to move that fails, and it will stay on the agenda to talk about the information section. We're now going to move to the leadership updates, and John and I have some leadership updates. And John wanted to start out giving some updates about current district operations, but before he does that, I would be remiss by not starting out giving my profound thanks and appreciation to Dr. Schultz. His stellar leadership to our school district has never been more apparent to me than watching him over the last 8 or so days guide our district through this transition. I cannot count the number of district leaders that have told me that they would not want to be working with anyone other than Dr. Schultz during this difficult time. So thank you, Superintendent Schultz.
Thank you, Chair Ellenberg.
Many people also say that challenging times can bring out the best or worst in people, and I truly believe that we have seen the best in our school district over the last week. I doubt I will ever get the chance to do an Oscar speech, but you never know. So this is my big chance, and I want to publicly thank some people, all of which I know I will not be able to name here, but all of which have been working nonstop for our students. Mary Whitey, who's in charge of district communications, Randy Smazel, Director of Teaching and Learning, Steve Butner, Director of Media and Technology, Jeff Jorgensen, Director of Student Support Services, Brian Bass, Assistant Superintendent, Shara Sandel, Administrative Assistant, David White, Supervisor of Transportation, and his team of bus drivers who have been delivering food throughout the metro area for our students in need. Dan Hutchinson, Supervisor of Food Services, who remade his entire food team over the weekend to offer food on the go to our families. Val Burke and her team, who created a child care model for healthcare workers, teachers, and essential state employees in 72 hours. Sam Beaverson, Michael Walker, Tom Connell, Eric Hamilton, all of our principals, everyone else at the district offices, everyone behind the scenes of these individuals, our educators, our paras, our clerical staff, and our custodial staff who have been cleaning up after all of us and will always be the last to go home. Thank you to all of you. I'll now turn it over to John, who will update us on the district, and then I'll move on with our board agenda.
Well, thank you for the kind comments. It is, I'm working in an environment that is both very generous and kind to everybody inside and outside of Edina, and an incredibly talented staff. We are going to be taking what happens every day in the classrooms of Edina schools and putting them into the homes of kids and where they reside in their school day beginning on Monday. From the governor. So it's exciting and it's amazing what has been done. We are working within the governor's directive of providing food for families, child care for our healthcare workers and teachers and emergency personnel, and we're also developing distance learning. We've had some amazing statistics come out of this. On March 20th, we reported that more than 3,000 books were checked out from district media centers by students. We handed out 1,000 Chromebooks to students. We had 100 teachers and specialists in a Google Meet planning session on that day. We have March 20th, that week, since that Monday, we served 1,402 breakfast and lunch meals. We had 80 children of first responders, healthcare workers, and district teachers attend childcare services at Highlands and at Concord, and the countless hours of the people, as Erica indicated, behind the scenes. We also are working with the community in providing dinners with our lunches and breakfast, help of Chair Allenberg as well as others in the community to deliver food to families. I would ask the community to pay attention to the website. We're going to be launching schedules this week, probably Wednesday or Thursday. Teachers are planning and they will be ready. The stuff that is coming out, the plan that's there, the information that's on the website is truly humbling to the amount of work that people did to put this transition in place. So I ask for patience as we transition from face-to-face to distance learning. And I thank you for all the kind words and support the community has provided.
Great. Thank you, John. I just realized I didn't thank John Tope, who's sitting way more than 6 feet away from me. So thank you, John. Our first order of business tonight is to approve the minutes from the February 6th, February 10th, March 4th, and March 5th work sessions, the February 10th regular meeting, and the March 15th emergency meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second,
I couldn't hear the second, who the second was.
I was, Ellen.
Thank you.
We will now vote by roll call to approve.
Allenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallen Friedman.
Aye.
Great.
Okay, the meeting minutes are approved. We have two different action sections this meeting. The first action section involves board actions we are recommending undertaking in order to ensure board activity can operate and govern through any unforeseen circumstances during this pandemic. I will walk through all of this in great detail for both the board and the community. We're doing this action section first because it affects certain agenda items in the rest of the meeting, mainly the public testimony portion. The first item up for action is policy 218. Do I have a motion to approve policy 218?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. After reviewing all of our board policies, I called a meeting of the Human Resources Committee, which included our legal counsel, due to some concerns I had regarding our policies and if they would sufficiently cover these unprecedented circumstances. Before I review the specifics of the policy, I want to note the things. One, our current circumstance constitutes an emergency as it applies to policy drafting and adoption. So policy 208 gives us the authority to vote on a new policy without going through the standard policy review process. Two, since this policy is proposed to be adopted under policy 208, it will expire 1 year from this date. From the date it is approved, unless we decide to refine it and bring it through the standard policy process to create a permanent policy, which I would recommend we do at a later date. Point 3, this has all been reviewed and approved by our district legal counsel, who is on our call if any board members have questions or clarifications. For the policy itself, it is comprised of 6 main sections, 4 of which extend and or clarify current policy. Sections 1 and 2 are summarizing a portion of Minnesota law related to pandemic and emergency situations and how we will operate under Minnesota law. Section 3A, basically all it is saying is that for all remote meetings, we are required to have a notice explaining the meeting will be held remotely. This was added because we are dealing now with Minnesota Statutes. We're dealing with Chapter 12, the declaration of a state of emergency, and Chapter 13D.021, which describes the conditions required for an electronic or virtual board meeting. They have some conflicting verbiage, So we wanted to clarify that under the present conditions in our school district, the public may not physically attend our meetings in person for health reasons, but the board chair can still be present physically if reasonable steps are in place to protect the health of the board chair. The main reason for the board chair to be present is to still be able to sign off on documents for the district to maintain activities. Section 3C, we are providing for assigning the signature duties of the board clerk to the business manager to streamline this process and limit the personal touch points at the district office, taking into consideration the health of both the board clerk and those at our district office. This does not change the elected title of who is board clerk, only temporary changes those duties until such time as our board can meet in person again, and the signature duties resume as normal. We are also requiring the vote of the board to undertake this process so no one board chair can change this on their own. Section 3D. This part is basically saying, since we are not having in-person meetings, we cannot have speakers. Therefore, our community input is going to have a different process, and we cannot abide by certain sections of our current policy 206. Again, we wanted to make sure the board voted to enact this so no one person could make this change. Section 3E. There is no secession policy in 202, which defines our officers and their roles beyond saying that the vice chair will assume the duties of the chair if the chair is not available. We thought it would be prudent to have a succession plan if for some reason the chair and vice chair are both unable to perform their duties. Section 3F. This section only states that this is an emergency policy and will expire 1 year from today's date unless we decide to vote it as a permanent policy. The last thing I would like to say is that I'm recommending we make 2 changes to the policy as written. 1, in section 1, in a purpose, we change the first sentence to say this policy direction, as opposed to saying the intent of the policy is to provide direction. And then in section 2, per what board member Green said, in sentence 2, we change it to say, in order to ensure that board meetings are conducted in a manner that keeps the public, district staff and board members safe, so that we add district staff into that sentence. So that is my overview of policy 218 and the intent of policy 218. I'd like it to open it up to any members of the HR committee that were involved in this to see if they have anything to add to my summary.
So I do not have anything to add. I think that's a good summary. Again, the primary purposes I think are really set out in C, D, and E, just to make sure that we can move forward in a timely fashion and the public can understand that. And again, this will expire within a year unless it gets reaffirmed by the board.
I am totally in agreement with Lenny and Erica, and I appreciate everybody adding input to it too.
So I guess the only other thing I would like to add is that as reviewing these policies, and I know that Ellen, you had some concerns about it. I actually think that I agree with some of the things that you pointed out, and I think that it would be wise of us to look at some of the things that you pointed out and make either this a permanent policy or some of the changes that you recommended to some of our other policies. But I think that we need to do that at a later date. I think the important thing for us to do right now is to have, because we are in a state of emergency right now, is have something in place that we can move forward with right now. And then because this is an emergency policy, it allows us to make updates to this, either this policy as needed. The other thing that I'm recommending that we do is to add this to the policy committee, not even through this month, but maybe next month, and figure out, okay, God forbid something like this happen. Some of these things actually need to be built into our actual policies, so then we wouldn't have to be in the scenario again. But I think it's important that we pass something.
So, Erica, I do have a couple things to say. I was waiting for, I know that you had opened the floor for HR committee people to reply. So I just wanted to make sure that unless this isn't the right time for me to explain my feedback.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Well, first, I want to thank those people on the HR committee. Can you guys hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I want to thank you all for the work that you did. It's very important, I think, when we're facing these sudden changes and unprecedented times. But there are some things about the policy that I think we don't actually need to just take this policy and approve it. I think that, in fact, it could be that we would very easily change policy. I sent it out to you, 202, by adding just a few sentences, and then we would have a more complete contingency plan for officers. So I would like you to look at that. It simply adds 3 sentences to current policy. To the vice chair, it would say, in the event that the chair is temporarily unable to perform the duties of the chair will be delegated to an officer of the elected board in the order of the precedence, A, vice chair, B, clerk, C, treasurer. This is the exact same wording that we're using in policy 203, which is the operation of the school board at a school board meeting when the chair is not there. Likewise, there is actually right now, even if we pass this, there is no contingency for treasurer, period. So I think that we should have a contingency for treasurer, and I would add to section F in policy 202, similar wording to what I just read. In the event that the treasurer is temporarily unable to perform their duties as treasurer, the duties of the treasurer will be delegated in the following order of precedence: A, assistant treasurer, B, director of business services, C, superintendent's designee. Likewise, I would use a similar wording for clerk, and the wording for clerk would be in the event that the clerk is temporarily unable to perform their duties as clerk, the duties of the clerk will be delegated in the following order of precedence: A, chair's assistant clerk designee, B, chair's assistant clerk designee, C, director of business services, and D, superintendent's designee. That mirrors the wording of when a clerk is not at a meeting, the chair will automatically, that's her role, is to assign the clerk's duty to one of the assistant clerks. So that's those are one of my comments, and I just, I have a couple more, but I would rather hear feedback whether or not the board feels that it would be so difficult to add those 3 sentences to policy 202, which would give us a contingency for the treasurer as well as the clerk.
So here's the issue with that, Ellen, is that we can't change a current policy without going through our policy process, which is why we built into our policies our ability to make an emergency policy, which allows us to write a policy and approve it in the same meeting without going to the policy committee. We can't update and change a current policy without going to policy committee, reading it 1 month, and then approving it the next month, which is the whole reason we have an emergency policy provision for us to write a policy 218. So we can't actually, I actually don't disagree with anything that you're saying, but we have to take that to policy committee and write it in there. And I actually disagree with some of the things that you're saying from a contingency plan perspective, because it's not going to help us in this scenario to have our contingency plan for the clerk be to assign it to the assistant clerk. Because what we're trying to do is,
Not what I read.
is that,
No, the chair assigns it to the assistant clerk.
but you're not listening to me, is that it won't help us to assign it to the assistant. Will you let me finish, please? It won't help us to assign it to the assistant clerk, because the point is to have the business director on it, because we don't want multiple people coming into the business office.
Right, and so, but this contingency plan, and I'm just throwing out ideas. I don't mean for you to get frustrated by hearing other ideas. I'm really sorry that it sounds that way to me, but I'm just saying that what my concept is to make this broader and include an automatic transfer of roles. And if I am not going to be able to make it to a meeting because of the pandemic, then certainly the assistant clerks wouldn't either, but it would just roll through those and automatically then become the director of business services. And so that was why I thought that this would be good, because we really don't know what the situation is going to be. But adding this also to include the treasurer during this time, I think if we are going to be rewriting policy to include other officers, and I think we should, then we might as well read this way, this meeting, and then I do think that there is, and I'm not positive of this, but I thought that there was an exceptional caveat in our policy that we could read and then implement at the same meeting, but perhaps there isn't. So I'm just tossing this out. If you guys think that we need to not have a contingency for the treasurer, and if you only think that right now we need to have a contingency for the clerk, that's fine with me. But I'd like it to be consistent with.
Okay, so Ellen, both Lenny and Janie would like to talk. So if I'm just going to interrupt you and let them talk really fast. Lenny,
Okay.
why don't you go? And then Janie, you can go.
Okay. So the reason this policy came up is because at every single meeting, there's the duty of the clerk to be signing things. And so the HR committee talked about the exigent need to have someone available in person to take care of that. So that's what led us to say, okay, here's how we're going to handle the clerk duties. The other ones, if we were going to talk about treasurer and we were going to talk about any of the other functions, I would want to know what function it is that someone's going to substitute in and who would be the appropriate person to substitute in. So that it's not just a simple matter of saying we're going to create a series of people based on title. I think the objective is to create a list of successors based upon skill set that aligns with the function that needs to happen. And so all that really means to me is that might be the right order, but it's something that would require a broader discussion. I think that for the purposes of tonight's meeting, what we're trying to do is we're trying to quickly enact something that covers what is a current issue that we absolutely have. And I agree with what Erica said, which is, Ellen, the things you've raised are things that should be discussed. But again, figure out what's the issue, what's the purpose that would be served from it, and then what the correct order would be for a designation. But I don't think that tonight is the time to do that. I think we're better off approving 218 and then circling back.
Okay, so,
Janie?
oh,
Ellen, Janie would like to speak.
yeah, I heard.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do agree that there is opportunity within policy to have some of this succession planning and some more contingency planning. I totally agree with that. As a group, we did meet and we had multiple discussions, and even within from our first discussion to where we've landed now, and in talking with Trevor, things have changed every day. This is so unique. And so I appreciate Trevor really guiding us to have a policy right now that is flexible to meet those needs. But I think I have to say that for today, March 23rd, 2020, this is something that we need in place today. But I wholeheartedly agree that this can be taken then back to policy at some point to say, is there more we can do? Are there other contingencies we should be thinking about? I think there isn't a disagreement in that, but I strongly believe that we need to have something in place tonight.
Okay, well, I agree there should be something in place tonight too. So that's not, I don't think any of us are in disagreement with that. I just want to raise a couple other points. One is it's not clear to me what will trigger this policy, which is why I was proposing the wording. The provisions of this policy will take effect upon a majority vote of the board, stating that a pandemic or other emergency exists. The provisions of this policy will remain in effect until a vote of the board declaring the emergency is over. So it's very clear both when we're operating under these proposed changes, policy 218, and when that period is over. And I just didn't see that in the policy.
So I think sub A.
Erica,
But is that Owen or Lenny?
yes, could I have the floor the next time there's an opening?
Sure, you can go right now.
Okay. So let me understand. So 218 is necessary for us to move forward with the rest of the meeting tonight? That is our approval of it?
Yes. Part of it, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So it seems reasonable that we could pass it and move forward. And then Ellen has raised some important considerations, and I think we can take it up at our next policy meeting. As policy chair, we can put it on our agenda and give priority attention to it. I think that meeting is coming up early April. We'll have to figure out how we're going to handle it, whether it's going to be virtual or not. But we could deal with both, Ellen, your policy 218 amendments and your policy 202 amendments. How would that feel to you, Ellen?
Well, the point that I just made on what would trigger this and what would stop it, I think that that's an important point that I would think that we could add to this policy tonight.
Well, sub A says that the policy is triggered by the board chair or administration. And then once that's triggered, then the board may elect by motion to bring any of the C, D, and E aspects.
Yes. For each of those, it's a board vote, right?
C is my board vote.
Let's see.
D is my board vote. E is not by board vote.
But does it say when it would end?
At any subsequent meeting in which the board brings a motion to end it. I mean, you wouldn't set, pandemics aren't scheduled.
Yeah, no, I know that, but I'm just saying that we will have, I mean, my proposal is that it's very clean. We know we're going to be operating under 218 or we're not going to be operating under 218. And I'm just proposing that as an addition. I understand what Owen is saying, and I would like to make sure that the community hears my other proposals for this that are, that the board has all seen, and the board is saying that they're going to put those on hold. And I'm just going to read them so that they're at least recorded by sound.
Can I just clarify for the public and for the rest of the board that the board is not saying that we're putting them on hold, that the board is actually saying that we feel the priority is to get something in place for tonight, and that we think we need to do our due diligence as a board and bring it to the policy committee. And that's different than putting something on hold. I would just like to clarify for the community. Putting something on hold implies that we are not interested in talking about it right now and that we want to take a break. And that's actually not what
Okay.
I think the rest of the board members feel.
The wrong word to use. I'm sorry. But anyway, my other suggestions are instead of letter C, where board members will participate remotely in school board meetings, I don't see anything in the emergency state statute that says we have to participate remotely. I rewrote that to say each member of the school board participating in a meeting by telephone or other electronic means is considered present at the meeting for purposes of determining quorum and participating in all proceedings. The presiding board member may preside remotely, which clarifies the fact that that not everyone needs to be not that the presiding member does not have to be present at the location that the meeting is regularly held. And my other point that I feel strongly about is that it's under E, because I want it to be clear to the community that the board intends to maintain opportunities for input whenever possible. And that's a very strong thing for me. And it's not clear in this policy that that's our intention. And I just thought that the wording that I was proposing was a little clearer. And the wording that I proposed was during the time of any health pandemic or emergency, as addressed by this policy 218, the board shall provide alternate means for community input or public comment as specified by policy 206. However, if such alternative means is not possible due to technical or operational constraints, the procedure for community input or public comment may be suspended or replaced as deemed appropriate by the school board until such time that such constraints have been overcome. For the period of time during which community input or public comment are suspended, the board shall provide opportunity for such input and comment by means of written comments submitted in advance to the meeting and read aloud during the meeting, subject to time restrictions. Public comments shall continue to be governed by policy 206. And what that just states is that we will find a way to continue listening to the community. And
Can I jump in real quick, Erica?
Sure.
Just because I want to address that issue, Ellen, I want to be very, very clear that as an HR committee and in our discussions with Trevor, at no point did we want to minimize the importance of public comment. And actually the wording that we went with based on Trevor's recommendation is something that is leaving it more flexible for us to figure out what is the best way. With things changing every day, every hour right now, that sentence is in place because we do want the community to feel connected to us and to still have the opportunity to give feedback. We just need to leave that more flexible than putting in as much detail right now, because we don't know what mode of communication is going to be the right one. We have to figure that out. So for tonight's purposes, that is in there because it is very important to us to have community input, and that is giving us the flexibility as we move forward to figure out what really is the best way to do that. So I want to make sure anybody watching does know that we really do feel strongly that we want to be able to hear from community members, and that there was not an intention of saying that we wanted to use this clause in any way to take that away. So.
Yeah.
Lenny, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Lenny.
Let me just add to that, which is that we actually had a detailed description of how we would get community input in the place of 206. And the recommendation and the decision was to not include the detailed description, but instead to have a general statement that we would then be able to say to the community, here's where we're at today, and here's the method to communicate with us. It's not to stop communication, but it's not to adopt a policy or a particular practice that might become unworkable. So we actually had a detailed description that we then deleted.
Good. I'm delighted to hear that. It didn't read as strongly like that, so maybe we just want to add that we intend to maintain opportunity for input during the time of any health pandemic or emergency, instead of leaving that out in the wording that you've used.
Julie?
This is Matt. I haven't spoken yet. Could we move forward and vote on this and get on with the meeting? I mean, we voiced long discussion now for 20 plus minutes about ways to rewrite and add context. Owen's going to take up in policy. All 7 of us want to hear from the community continually, anytime. Never been an issue, but we're dealing with a pandemic and we have to get on to the important parts of this meeting, and we can wordsmith this in the next policy meeting, as all 7 members seem to agree upon. So I would table this, vote on it, and get on with the important work.
I just want to make sure Julie hasn't had a chance to voice anything. Julie?
Just quickly, my understanding, just to respond, Section C was, this policy was written in with this, what's going on in this pandemic specifically. So us not being, not having the choice whether or not we can be present or not was how I read that language. And then 2, for the community input, I mean, we still have channels of communication that are open for the community and encourage anyone to use email, phone numbers. I mean, we have ways to get community input. So that isn't going away. I just wanted to clarify that because it sounds as if we're cutting it off. And then from what Ellen was saying about putting parameters around that. And so I just wanted to make that clear that the community channel is still open. So that's it.
So I think everyone has had a chance to voice their concerns. I had suggested 2 changes from a semantic perspective to the policy. I think we can either vote for a clean policy and send it to policy committee to mark up and vote with the 2 policies that I changed. I'm a little concerned about trying to take in a lot of comments right now because I think it's going to be hard to vote on it tonight. So I guess I would leave it up to you guys. Do you want to vote on just a clean policy as it's written and posted in board book? Or do you want to vote on it with the 2 changes that I made, which it was just adding 2 words into it? So
I would take your words as a friendly amendment to my motion because I think I'm the one that brought the motion.
Yep.
So I would view those as a friendly amendment to the motion in terms of language. And then I would, I'm fine proceeding to vote.
Okay, so let's proceed to vote to approve policy 218 with the amended language as stated earlier. And Sarah, let's vote by roll call to approve, like I said, policy 218 with the amended language.
And Erica, you'll give me those 2 words? Or did you
Yes.
give those to me already? Okay, great. All right.
Ma'am.
So Allenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallen Friedman.
Aye.
Great.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Next on the agenda are the suspension of sections 3 and 6 of policy 206. Do I have a motion to approve the suspensions of section 3 and 6 of policy 206?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. In doing this, I just want to, as we were talking about earlier, I just wanted to clearly state to the public that we're not abandoning our commitment to getting public input. We're just we're putting on hold getting public input via in-person testimony. Our recommended new protocol is to email the board, and a designated individual will read a representative sample of emails related to the board agenda during community input. But we're also exploring ways that we could get community input differently, depending on how long this process goes on. So I just wanted to state that. Does anyone have any comments they'd like to make on this this action item?
I don't know exactly how this works. Can we just talk a little bit? We're rescinding this.
We're just putting this on hold. The two sections of policy 206 that say that people can come in person to give testimony because people can't. We have declared, as stated earlier, we've declared it an emergency and we've prohibited the public to come to our meetings. But then we have a policy that says people can come in public to give testimony. So we're suspending basically the part of the policy that says, please come and give us testimony in public. And then in lieu of that, we're asking people to send us emails.
Okay.
So that was it, because we felt that if we moved on to the agenda item that said reading community input, that we'd actually be violating our own policy about community input.
Erica?
Yes.
This is Owen. What I'd like to underscore is that we will then address that in the next policy committee. And we'll address any concerns regarding that and underscore the opportunity of the public to interact with us in person, actually not interact, but speak to us. And I want to reaffirm what Ellen was saying, that we very much appreciate and value and need community input. And so that we do not have in-person testimony is just due to the emergency nature of this board meeting and the possibility of spreading the contagion. So we have no interest in suppressing the community voice, and we will work this through in the language in our next policy committee meeting.
Yep. Anyone else? Okay, we'll now vote by roll call to approve the suspension of sections 3 and 6 of policy 206.
Hallenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallen-Friedman.
Aye.
The suspension of sections 3 and 6 of policy 206 is approved. Finally, up for action is the vote to give our business director, John Tope, the temporary ability documents that require the board clerk's signature. Do I have a motion to approve the delegation of the board clerk duties?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Who was that, Julie or Janie?
I think we both said it at the same time.
Okay.
I heard Jenny.
Okay. Is there anything anyone wanted to discuss about this? No? Okay. We'll now vote by roll call to approve the temporary delegation of the board clerk duties.
Hallenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallen-Friedman.
Aye.
The temporary delegation of board clerk duties is approved. Okay, we are now going to move on to reading community input we've received via email regarding agenda items for tonight's board meeting. And for those in the community that have not received any district communications from us, we're asking that the community email the board, and we'll read a example of emails pertaining to board agenda topics at our virtual board meetings. Depending on how long the requirement is to have virtual board meetings, we might try to come up with a different process to try to better engage the community. Since we can't have in-person testimony, we're looking into different ways that we can do this to better engage our community. For tonight's board meeting, we received 3 emails as of noon today. Some of them have been edited for length and to remove some identifying information, but in the spirit of their input was retained. John Tope will be reading the community input for us tonight. Anything that was received after noon today will be read at next month's board meeting. John?
I hope you can hear me. Board Chair Allenberg, do you want me to list the name of the writer?
I think so. They gave permission to, so I think it'd be good too. Thank you.
Okay. So the first email is from Brian Landon, and he writes, having moved to Edina from Los Angeles in 2016, I have spent 4 years extolling the virtues of Concord Elementary, EPS, and what I have perceived to be the largesse with which the school board has had at its disposal. The people of this community are staunch advocates of education, passionate about our community, and frequently remind me of the success of education platforms during recent elections. I know my fellow Concord parents are up in arms with anything that threatens the educational harmony we consider to be the cornerstone of why we chose this community in the first place. Needless to say, if this matter is simply about bridging a $100,000 budgetary shortfall, then by all means, please consider allowing Concord families to raise the funds, similar to how families at other schools have made private donations towards playground equipment. As far as the rationale for reducing sections, I think it's ludicrous to consider taking a group of kids that have been in 22 to 23 student classrooms for 4 years and immediately migrate them to 27 per class, regardless of what the top end ranges are. Adding 4 to 5 kids to a class will absolutely increase the chance of our middle of the road / average learners falling through the cracks, which is a sobering thought in a city that has long strong education. Let's also be clear that reducing to 5 sections is not really sustainable, as it leaves zero cushion to accommodate late registrants / new families. What happens then? We moved into the neighborhood in 2018, and just since we've been here, there must be 5 new families on our street alone. There are new builds going up, older homes for sale, etc., and the growth of the area is incredible. Instead of cutting sections, which could have a resounding effect on some learners that only have 2 years left at the school, let's instead focus on cultivating a plan to accommodate the population explosion ongoing in the area. We would willingly help you to reimagine how this school and the district as a whole can help accommodate the fact that this area is only going to continue to grow in the future. Let's not punish the kids for that growth. Let me close by saying that the kids of our community, along with us parents, are going through a profoundly difficult and uncertain time with COVID-19. While school is technically slated to start up again on the 30th, I think it's safe to say that that is unlikely given the rate at which the virus is infecting people nationwide. Schools in LA, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, all likely to be closing schools for the rest of the academic year. I just imagine we will be following suit in some form or fashion. Assuming we do and the year is curtailed, please do not overlook the fact that these children will have just undergone an extremely traumatic experience that provided no traditional year-end school closure. Not all kids enjoy the same remote learning environment, and some are destined to fall behind in these next few months. Who knows what the fall will look like? And I would just call on you as leaders to ensure disruptions are minimized by not mandating 20% class size increases on top of an already difficult transition. Thank you for your consideration, Brian Landon. The next email is from Tim and Annie O'Neill, and it reads, "Hello, Superintendent Schultz and School Board. Thank you for all you're doing for our Edina Public Schools, especially during this extra challenging time. We have two issues for you to discuss tonight in light of the board's proposed budget cuts. Issue number one, why are Edina's elementary class size guidelines consistently higher than the Minneapolis metro area class size averages? EPS's class size guidelines have been almost exactly the same for the past 10 years, yet every elementary grade class size in Edina exceeds the Minneapolis metro area average class sizes. This formula is setting Edina classrooms up for larger than average class sizes. A, why does Edina Public Schools have a class size guideline for kindergarten of up to 24 kids per class when the Minneapolis metro average is 20.9 kids per class? B, why does Edina Public Schools have a class size guideline for first grade of up to 24 kids per class when the Minneapolis metro area average is 21.7 kids per class? C, why does Edina Public Schools have a class size guideline for third grade of up to 26 kids per class when the Minneapolis metro area average is 24.2 kids per class? D, why does Edina Public Schools have a class size guideline for fourth grade of up to 27 kids per class when the Minneapolis metro area average is 25.3 kids per class? E, why does para support not kick in until what looks to be a very high number of students per class given these Minneapolis metro area class averages? I.e., para support in fourth grade will not happen until there are 30 students per class. It is time to revisit these guidelines so that Edina is a leader with smaller class sizes. Issue number two, the proposed budget cut and its impact on Concord Elementary. Concord is Edina's largest and fastest growing elementary school. What is being done by the district to plan for this substantial increase, wording from the demographic study, in resident/neighborhood students? Why should Concord start the year averaging 27 kids per class, almost the largest fourth grade average of any Minneapolis metro area school district? How can cutting a fourth grade teacher this fall make sense when Minnetonka's fourth grade classes average 23.5 kids per class and Eden Prairie averages 23.6 kids per class? Thank you again for all that you do for our schools. Your work is not easy. Please make some hard decisions so that Edina is a leader with smaller class sizes. Thank you, Tim and Annie O'Neill. The last email is from Sarah Rodis, and she writes, we are excerpting a lot of this, but she writes, however, I don't know how you can push to have that level of individualized attention when you have 5 or so more kids per class. It seems in direct conflict with the Edina School's emphasis on individualized learning. If the school is going to emphasize individualized learning as a key pillar, let's keep class sizes smaller, in line with our competitive set. Let's allow the teacher to provide that individualized learning that is only possible with reasonable class sizes. If you have additional questions or I can further clarify my point of view on this, please don't hesitate to reach out. I feel strongly that the public schools have historically been a competitive asset for Edina, and that allowing class sizes to increase is yet another chip away at the overall competitiveness of the schools in Edina and of the overall value of the Edina community. Sincerely, Sarah Rodis.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you reading those. We're now going to move on to our consent agenda. Please note that policy 520 was removed from the consent agenda at the beginning of the evening. Is there anything anyone wants to remove from the consent agenda? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Okay. We will now vote by roll call to approve the consent agenda.
Ellenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones, Ellen,
Sorry, I was on mute. Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallen Friedman.
Aye.
The consent agenda has been approved. Okay, we're moving on to our second action portion of the evening. First up is our 2020-2021 budget alignment plan. Do I have a motion to approve the budget realignment plan?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. John, do you have any comments you'd like to make before the board discussion on this topic?
Go ahead.
John Tope or John Schultz, either one of you.
Yeah, I'd just like to start out, Chair Allenberg, by mentioning that this budget had a projected deficit of slightly over $1 million. We are solving half of the projected deficit with revenue enhancements that are one-time, that will come in before the end of the fiscal 19-20 year. Therefore, at the end of the fiscal year 19-20, we'll be making an assignment of that amount of about $500 at the end of fiscal 19-20 to close half of the budget gap for 2021. And then the other half of the deficit we solved with expenditure reductions. And as the board has seen, and it's been through Finance and Facilities Committee twice now, there are a few enhancements as well. The other note that I would like to mention is we have some ratio adjustments that we are doing with special education due to increased numbers. We are folding those into the budget. And we'll also increase, because I have better information on the special education aid, we'll also be increasing the special education aid for the 2021 budget that we're scheduled to receive from Minnesota Department of Education. One final note, enrollment for 2021 continues to trend over the initial projection that I made of 8,299 students. So that is good news for the district. Don't have final numbers yet. They're still offering open enrollment slots to some people, and we'll report back to the board on what those projections are when we have them. Just to quickly go over the budget document itself, the reductions are listed in the left column. First reduction is Concord for $100,000. Second reduction is moving some expense from the general fund to the capital projects levy. That is increasing the amount of percentage for a few staff from the general fund over to the capital projects levy. A $400,000 reduction for the high school, the equivalent of about 4 FTEs. It may be a little bit more than that. We'll have to see what Andy Beaton comes up with as far as actual FTEs. And then we're also reducing the contingency for both the assistant superintendent and the superintendent. They both had $100,000 contingencies. We're reducing those by half to $50,000 each, so a $50,000 reduction there. We're making some district office adjustments in strategic planning, in census, special education, and teaching and learning. That total $75,000. And then we're also adding a counselor at the high school, I believe in 9th grade, and also allocating another $100,000 towards special education, para support, or intervention, depending on what Mr. Jorgensen deems necessary there. And I think Director Schmazel had mentioned here at the board meeting, either last board meeting or the board meeting before that, the need to increase our multilingual by 0.55. So that adds up. If go to the next page, and I had this printed out, that's why I'm referring to that. Reductions of $775,000 and enhancements of $255,000 for a net reduction of $520,000.
And I would just add to that that summary that John just gave, is that I was this budget, in addition to making the cuts that John's asking us to make, we also approached this creatively to solve some questions and problems predominantly with counselor ratios and providing more service to our ninth graders as they transition from middle school to the high school. We also heard from special ed that there's more need for para support. So giving Jeff some flexibility with para support as well as intervention. And then as you heard, and I believe it was December presentation for multilingual, we added some staffing to that with our growing population of multilingual students. So with that, I recommend you approve that at the 2020-2021 budget alignment plan.
Oh, yeah, John?
Just one other thing to add, with these reductions in revenue enhancement, this puts us just over our fund balance policy of 6% at a projected 6.1%. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, John. I'll just open up to the board for any comments or questions that you might have. And one thing I just wanted to note for the public is that this is not the final budget. We're actually approving a budget plan that will guide us for our final budget. So I want to make sure the community understands that there will be other opportunities to come and speak to us if you have concerns about the budget, and there'll be other opportunities for engagement regarding the budget. The final budget usually does not get approved until June. Yes, Matt?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say, I think John Schultz and the group have done an excellent job working with all the different site leads to work this budget forward. Every year we go through a really challenging process around trying to allocate all of our resources toward our highest needs. And you could always argue that one group or one interest area could have gotten more resources. So as Erica said, there's going to be continued work over the next few months before we get to final. But I really think that over the past 3 years, I've watched this process that John Schultz first brought forward to really put ownership at the site head level and bring that up through the administration and the lead team has just continually improved. So I really am very complimentary of the way this has worked itself forward.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Do other board members have questions? It's hard for me to tell. No?
Okay, so, well, I just,
Oh, no, I have
sorry.
a pen.
Yep. Oh, go ahead, Ellen, and then Julie.
okay, I just have one question. I would like to discuss a little bit about the issues raised by members about class sizes. And I think that we are going to be discussing class size in the next, well, not the next, but in 2 agenda items. Is that right? Or is this, we're going to be talking about the class size guidelines?
No, class sizes were appended to the budget, but we don't have class sizes on our agenda tonight.
Okay, so the report done that was created for us that discusses class sizes, this would be the time to discuss that?
The
one prepared by Mary Manderville?
Are you talked about class size that we're going to do in the work session?
I'm talking about the agenda. It was attached to the board book.
We moved that because we moved that to move it to, but because we were going to have a work session prior to this, and we had to take that, we had to not have our work session, so that's not on our board agenda tonight anymore.
So I think Ellen is talking, if I look at board book on like page 145, there's a report. That's probably what she's referring to.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lenny. That is what I'm referring to. I don't have I don't have the hard copies of everything here, so and I can't pull it up on my screen here. So I'm looking to that.
So we don't have class size on our agenda tonight. So I think that document that you're referring to was from something that used to be on our agenda, but it's not on our agenda anymore for the meeting tonight.
So this is Owen, we'll be discussing that at a work session in the next month, 2 months?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Good. And then the public can hear from us and we'll be able to talk about it in a board meeting in a month or 2. Okay, good.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yep. That's exactly why I'm bringing it up, because I wasn't sure. It didn't seem like this was the right spot to talk about class sizes, and yet it was in the board book as a document.
Yeah, the original plan was it was at the 5 o'clock work session prior to this, so we could have some context to some of the budget information. So we were going to have an hour and a half or so to talk about class sizes as a board, just from a strategic perspective. And so that report was created for us to utilize. I'm actually not quite sure why it's in board book, but it's not actually part of our agenda tonight on this meeting.
Right. So I would like to talk about that at a future meeting.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yep. Julie, I'm sorry. Did you have questions about the budget though, Ellen? I don't want to not answer any questions. Okay.
No.
Julie?
Yeah, no, the only thing I wanted to follow up on to what Ellen was saying too about a work session discussion is listening to all the community feedback. I want to make sure that we're taking a holistic approach and looking at the district as a whole when we look at class sizes. And what I hear are two separate asks from the Concord community. One is to look at Concord and make an exception to the current policy as a whole. So I just hope that I want to make sure that that's part of our discussion in our work session.
Yeah, for sure.
Great.
Yep.
Okay.
And I was going
Thank
to
you.
talk about this. I'll talk about it more later, but just so the board and the community knows that John and I are going to be talking hopefully at the end of next week, but about rescheduling the work sessions and all the things that we had to cancel last week. And we'll get that out to the board and community as soon as we can.
Great. Thank you so much.
Does anyone else, Janie, or I think everyone other, Janie, Lenny, did you have any questions about this agenda item?
I'm good to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll now vote by roll call to approve the budget realignment plan.
Ellenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallen Friedman.
Aye.
The budget realignment plan is approved. Next up for action is the Valley View School renovation. Do I have a motion to approve the Valley View School renovation?
So moved.
Sorry, thank you. John, again, I believe, for the Valley View School renovation.
Thank you, Chair Allenberg. On February 6th, we took bids for the renovation at Valley View. I spoke with Eric Hamilton, our supervisor of buildings and grounds. The bids in totality came in under what was projected, so he was very pleased with the bids. The total project cost is just slightly over $6 million, and we have, as you can see on the attachment, multiple areas of work, electrical, mechanical, along with fire suppression, and also painting, terrazzo, tile, drywall, masonry, concrete, structural steel, carpentry and demolition, roofing, sealants, doors, frames, and hardware, and entrances, storefront, curtain walls. So I think as Eric was comfortable with this bid, Kraus Anderson is as well. You will note there was one page that was placed in the board packet as well, saying that there was a mathematical error by TMG Construction for bid division 6A, which was for carpentry and demolition, and that's noted in the document that they withdrew their bid, and they apologize for that, and they look forward to working with us on future projects. So just a mathematical error, and they had to withdraw their bid on that, but we want that noted. And I'll take questions.
Thank you, John. Anyone on the board have questions about this bid?
No questions here.
No? Okay. We'll now vote by roll call to approve the Valley View School renovation bid.
Ellenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson? Owen? Michelson? Shaw?
Aye.
Wallen Friedman?
Aye.
Thank you.
The Valley View School renovation bid is approved. Now we're going to move on to the South View roof bid approval. Do I have a motion to approve the South View roof bid?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there a second?
Yes, second.
Great. John?
Yeah. February 26, 2020, we received bids for the re-roofing project at Southview Middle School. I did speak with Supervisor of Buildings and Grounds, Eric Hamilton, on this one as well. This one came in just slightly over what the projected bid was by about $30,000. It's not a big amount. He did indicate to me that he could work that $30,000 amount in with our long-term facility maintenance levy dollars. So he was comfortable with the bid and wants to approve recommendation from the board for InSpec as our re-roofing contractor for Southview Middle School.
Great. Thank you, John. Questions from the board on the Southview roof bid?
No questions.
Okay.
So John, you said InSpec,
Sorry.
but the action item says Central Roofing Company? It says both InSpec and Central Roofing. So the letter says Central Roofing.
Yes.
Maybe
InSpec must be the consultant that's working with us. Yeah, because I've worked with InSpec before, Director Friedman in the Hopkins School District. They're the ones that make sure that the bid is within guidelines and so forth. So Central Roofing is the actual contractor that will be doing the work.
And the letter says $699. The bid sheet says $599. Is there $100,000 on a second bid sheet for a second part of the job?
I don't have any other information than that. That's an interesting question that I did not catch. I'm not sure on that one.
So if we look at the letter to Eric, it does reference $699, but then the attachment. And I know sometimes on these bids that there's two parts to them. So I don't know if there's a second part.
I'm suspecting that there is. Director Wallenfried does. If you look in the letter, it's saying we recommend acceptance of their bids, plural, as outlined above. So I'm thinking maybe something else didn't get attached that was the extra $100,000. I think if the board's comfortable, I think you should go ahead and approve the bid. I will get the backup documentation from this, or if you're not comfortable with it, we'll submit it again at the next board meeting.
So I think we can approve the bid with a cap of $699, subject to underlying documentation.
I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
Yeah, I would recommend we do that.
Right. 1 second.
Sorry, John, I didn't notice that earlier. Otherwise, I would have shot you an email.
Yeah, it does say addendum 1 here too in the bid tabulation. So that is what makes me suspect there might be something that's missing.
So I'm going to change the motion that we approve the Southview roof bid subject to a cap of $699,000 with underlying documentation.
Yes.
Are you guys comfortable with that change to the, okay. We will now vote by roll call to approve the Southview roof bid. With
Alan Burke?
the
With
Oh.
with the changes you just
with
said.
the changes, yes. Thank you, Sarah.
Right,
Aye.
Perfect. Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallen Friedman,
Aye.
The Southview roof bid was approved with the changes that I said earlier. Next up for action is the purchases of buses. Do I have a motion to approve the purchases of buses?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Great. John, you're up again.
Thank you, Chair Allenberg. Annually, the district looks at taking out of our bus fleet older buses. This year, the recommendation is for 5 buses, and the ones that we're replacing have a range of 12 years to 17 years typically on a depreciation schedule from the state. The buses are depreciated over a 12-year cycle, so we do have some buses that are past the depreciation cycle. We are looking to purchase 5 77-passenger buses, all gasoline powered. We did talk about other ways to power buses and whether that was a good idea to move forward with or not at this time. We've decided not to do that per the recommendation of David White, our Supervisor of Transportation. And we did go off of state contract for both of these quotes that we have. The letter is attached. We had 2 quotes, one from Hoagland Bus Company at an estimated $449,000 and one from North Central Bus and Equipment for an estimated $459,000. So it's our recommendation that we accept the low bid from Hoagland Bus Company at $449,414.20. Again, this is an estimate based on what we get for our trades, but we did the same amount of trade estimates for both of the quotes. This will be expense because the buses will not be delivered until August, expense in our fiscal year 2021 operating capital budget.
Great. Thank you, John. Are there any questions regarding the purchasing?
So sorry about this. I do have more questions. And I should know the answer to this one, by the way. But I usually don't see a breakout for tax. I know that in certain circumstances, things we purchase, we don't have to pay a tax on. So I'm guessing that buses don't fall in that category.
Yes, that is exactly correct, Director Wallen Friedman. We do have to pay the vehicle tax on buses. One of the only ones that we do.
Anyone else?
I actually have one more.
Oh.
So is the tax, I was trying to figure out the math on this, John. So 85 and 27 times 5 gets me above 449. Even with the 5,000 estimate, I'm just wondering if you could just check on that. And again, I apologize. I should have been reading these things earlier.
John, you're on mute.
Sorry. Okay, so I took the 85,336 times 5 plus the tax of 27,734.20 gets me to 54,414 minus the 5,000 estimate of trade, 449,414.20. I think the math works.
Okay, I read the taxes per bus rather than per aggregate.
Okay.
That's because we've got, I just read it wrong.
Yep.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll now vote by roll call to approve the purchase of the buses.
Ellenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallen Friedman,
Aye.
The purchase of buses is approved. We're now moving on to the information portion of our evening, and part of the information portion is staff recognition. So before we move on to the rest of it, I know I'm going out of order, but I did have some staff I wanted to read. So the first is a commendation of Terry Maxwell, the Kids Club Program Manager at Cornelia Elementary. So in an email from parent to Terry and Principal Masika, I wanted to let you know how much you're appreciated and to thank you for all you do. My children have always felt safe and supported, and I especially enjoyed attending Kids Club and Wise Guys under your supervision. I still remember leaving work a bit early one day to pick up my child from Kids Club, only to hear them say they wish they could stay at Kids Club to have more fun with the team and their friends. Our children were enjoying their time and asked to be picked up later. Our guilt as full-time working parents faded away. The activities, structure, support, and caring attitude from all staff involved have made this program a safe and fun place for our children to thrive. Thank you for everything, and all the best to you and your family. And then we have a commendation of Diane Morris, Student Information Systems Specialist in the district office, in an email from parents applying for open enrollment to Mary Manderfeld. It says that the Edina Public Schools Enrollment Office, in particular Diane Morris, has been exceptionally responsive, respectful, and competent in their interactions with us. This includes many exchanges over the past 4 years, beginning 2 years in advance of our child's kindergarten year. We cannot overstate how much this is appreciated. We thank you for your consideration. So the rest of our information, I wanted to make sure that I addressed some of the questions about policy 104 and the appendices. So I don't know if the rest of the board wants to pull up policy 104 and the appendices, and then I know Owen and Julie, if you guys want to jump in on this part as well. But so Ellen, the reason that the appendices got removed were a couple of different reasons, but the main one is that no one uses the protocol and no one uses the appendices. We asked building administrators if anyone followed this protocol and if anyone ever turned in these forms from a complaint/concern resolution protocol perspective, and they said that they weren't ever being used. And so then we had Brian Bass check to see from a best practice perspective if other districts had a similar type of concern protocol for parents and students in their policies, and if they had something like this, and they in their policies, and we were actually an outlier in the metro area. No one else had anything like this. And then we also had a fairly robust conversation about whether or not we wanted to have a complaint protocol like this that was we felt it was a little actually rigid from a protocol perspective, and we felt that it might actually dissuade parents and students from coming and writing complaints. If, for example, the first thing a student has to do to bring up a complaint about a teacher is fill out a form, it might be a barrier to parents and students feel comfortable making complaints. And we want students, parents, community members to feel that there aren't barriers and that you can come in and that we want to make sure there's many different ways. If you're comfortable, if you want to send an email, if you want to just pull aside your teacher in the hallway as a student and say, hey, I felt uncomfortable with this. And so we just felt it process. And that if there are issues beyond this that they really need to be taken care of within the HR department. It's not necessarily a community process that needs to be outlined. So those were the reasons that the appendices were removed. And I don't know if Julie or Owen, you have anything beyond what I just said to add to that.
Yeah, I would, I just like to add that this policy hadn't been looked at since 2012, 8 years ago. And so the way we communicate has changed dramatically since then even. And so that was another, just another reason why it seemed like it was very outdated. So the information that we got from other districts that no one else was using a form held true. So just wanted to add that it's a very old policy.
This is Owen. What sold me was that I'm a minimalist, and if there's verbiage in policy that's not being used at all, then let's get rid of it and let's use what is actually actionable right now. But I'm amenable if we, if felt that we need to bring it back in, we can have a discussion at the policy meeting in early April about that.
So the policy itself hasn't been reviewed for a while, and that was the other question that I had, was that this seemed a little disjointed, that we were going to be bringing forward the appendix without review of the policy, unless I'm hearing something else, but it doesn't look like that was what is on the agenda. So are you planning on, is the policy committee going to be reviewing this policy?
You know, I have a question about that as well, because we as a policy committee decided we had already reviewed it and had a pretty robust conversation about it. So I look to Owen as the chair. It sounds like you want to, I'm not sure if you want to bring it back to policy, but I thought we were all in agreement in our policy committee to bring it to the meeting, this board meeting. So I guess I need clarification from Owen.
Yes, our intention was to bring it back to this meeting. It was going to be, of course, an in-person meeting, but yes, for discussion, and then hear the sentiments of the community, of the board members, and then take action based off of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Can I ask? Oh, go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So I just have a couple, you know, what I'm listening to is, and what my questions were, and I'm sorry, this is, you know, this is the last thing that I wanted to spend talking about on a pandemic day. So but I'm responding to the fact that it's on the agenda, and I don't really want to spend a lot of time on it, but I do think that the policy does need some time, some work. I'd like to make sure that there's some record keeping, and I'm not sure that I see that and or other processes, and I'm not sure that parents really will know what the process is and what the expectation is. I know that there are, or that there's enough direction for more serious complaints. When you look at our policies and you may want to complain about something, it's not, you look up the word, you can see the word complaint, but if it's a harassment complaint, there's a really clear protocol. So I would like it to send it back to the policy committee to sort that out and or decide if you're fine with this policy, you can bring it back to the board as a full policy review. But right now, the only thing that's gone to the board is that the appendix is going to be taken out. And I think that you may want to consider looking at that policy generally and maybe adding some words that have to do with record keeping and or directing people to other policies.
Okay.
This is Owen. I think we can take that back again and review that in early April.
So just to note, the policy itself has cross references to the harassment and violence policy. So if you were to pull this up, you would read down and see that there's a reference to the other policy for harassment, for bullying. So I don't know if it's our practice to include a language in the policy that directs you to another policy, or simply to have that reference at the bottom that directs you to the other policy.
Well, I actually think that particularly for harassment cases, we should be doing all we can to make sure that people know who they should go to and where they should go. And many people don't know that those cross references really, you know, I can't say that that's, I would suggest that maybe we could do it better, but
I think, Owen, to your point, why don't we talk about this in policy committee?
I think that's a great idea. We'll do it early April.
So from an information perspective, does anyone in the board have anything that they would like to inform the community about from their committees? No
update.
Julie?
Is this an okay time for an announcement, or is it, I just wanted to talk about the meal fund?
Sure.
Want me to wait?
Yep.
Okay. So I just wanted to let the other board members know and the community know that, and Dr. Schultz mentioned this at the start of the meeting, but over the last week, we had leadership from Edina Give and Go and the Ed Fund and the Meal Fund, along with support from Edina Schools, different representatives together and organized, planned, and began implementation of the Meal Fund Relief Program, which is in response to the COVID-19 and how it's having its impact on families. And the purpose of this program is to provide dinner and evening meals for families that are receiving our breakfast and lunch through the state program. So it fills this this dinner gap that is present. It's also important, I wanted to thank our community members because they've already rallied behind this, and we also have community partners. Many people have donated to the Sheridan Story and Veep. And as we continue to roll out providing the food, as you guys can imagine, everyone listening at home too, there is a shortage across the nation of needs. And part of that is going to be us being nimble and working with a lot of different community partnerships to make sure that we're able to get the food and be able to serve it to our families. So a huge thank you to everyone who put a ton of work in over the last week. A lot of people have already donated money. We're up and it's rolling in, which is great since Friday. And if anyone would like more information on in terms of donating, or if you are someone who needs resources and needs help, I encourage you to go to edinaschools.org. You can go to the COVID response page. It's on the home page. It's pretty easy to find, and you can either donate or you can get some more information. So that's it.
Great. Thank you, Julie.
Yeah.
The only announcement I wanted to make was, as I said earlier, that John and I are going to work on a new board schedule to replace the agenda items we missed from the last work session. And then we missed a few presentations that were supposed to be done at our regular board meeting last Monday. And so we're going to, we're trying to be sensitive to our district employees and what they're working on right now. But we also realize that it's important that we also keep progress towards normal district operations. So we're going to try to balance those two things and come up with a board schedule that we're hoping to get out to the community and to the board early next week. He's shaking his head. Yeah. So I think that's all I have. John, do you have anything else?
Nope. No, we can do that. We can get the schedule up.
Okay. Great. I think that's all I have. So unless anything has anything else, I just want to again say thank you to everyone here in the district. And I hope all of your families, everyone at home is coping okay, and that your kids are getting along better than mine are. And I will now adjourn the meeting. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Erica.
Good night.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.